What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here, and this is going to be a new album review, and I'm going to be reviewing the latest album from the band Ghost, entitled Impera. This is the band's 5th studio album in their entire discography, and this is the follow-up to their 2018 album of Prequel, so this album marks the band's first album in more than a couple of years. Look, I've never been quite a big fan of Ghost, although I really do admire the sound, the identity, and as well as their very artistic and theatrical style and performances. This is also the latest album to be released through the Loma Vista Recordings record label, the same label that Korn released their new album Requiem. They are not one of those that I would personally accept as one of the best bands, as many people do, though I really appreciate the uniqueness and for what they have been doing as a band, especially with their identity and the style of music. The 3 singles onto this album that did come out before the album's release did spark a lot of the attention and the anticipation for this record, so I thought I would just jump right in and listen to what this new Ghost album is all about. And I'll have to be very brutally fair and honest with you guys, and I know this is going to be triggering a lot of the fans, but for my views and opinions about this album, that I think that this is a very overhyped album. But it does have quite a lot of the moments that I did like, but as an album, this album for me is the weakest pile of new material in the band's discography, and I was more of a fan onto the sounds of like the debut of Opus Eponymous and even on their 2015 album of Meliora. So I think that Impera as an album, to me, the more I was really listening to this, giving it some more spins along the way, the album just comes off for me as like a very average sequel to what the rest of the discography was before this. The first track on the record and the opening of the track Imperium, a delicate acoustic sound, twin guitar notes matching the slower tempo, marching drum patterns with the brief melody, to start the album off with the main fruition, to anticipate the rest of the record, and I still think that the drums do sound alike to what Battery from Metallica was like. Then onto the first full band sound song on the album of Kaiserion, which is a very, very good track. It's big, it's got a dramatic beginning with Tobias's high vocals, tons of alternate palm muting, there's so much energy, it's very consistent with the adrenaline that's all boosting all at once from the sound of the drums to the guitars that they do deliver in such a crafted yet very catchy direction, and it is like a traditional heavy metal type of style, a very strong number to begin the album. Spillways opens on the piano and thick bass type of sound, but this is more onto a poppier type of mood, but it still has that theatrical setting of performances, especially onto the sound of the vocals and key changes. It's incredibly melodic as it explores more harmonies, and I think that instrumentally it is a very solid number, but not one of the strongest tracks. As much as I really liked Kaiserion, I think this number does follow in a pretty good way. The song Call Me Little Sunshine, unfortunately to me, is where the mediocrity does take a bit of a nosedive. Incredibly pedestrian and quite repetitive, where it does take things down into something much more mellow and moody that I do appreciate, but it does not fulfill itself at all. Well-performed sound onto the hook, but at the same time, this is for me one of the most mediocre singles that the band has ever done, and especially onto the next track of Hunter's Moon, which I personally think it has some more control, some more substance, and I think that the simplicity and the more darker expression of this track works out. The band with the musicianship sound tighter, and I do think that this is one of the better sounding singles onto this album. One of my favorites on the album is on the track of Watcher in the Sky. This star sings on heavy crunchy riffs, which its guitar tone, by the way, is very good. The sinister vibe onto the sound was really, really good, and especially onto the chorus, which I think is very memorable. I find that this is a song that has some more menace, and with the way the progressiveness the track does deliver, with some amazing guitar solo work. So I do think that Watcher in the Sky is one of the other strong tracks on this record. Then there's the track of Dominion, which is like an interlude piece, with its free, slow, spacious type of brass sections. They do sound beautiful, making it in like a weary type of direction. Then the track list of this album do take the worst part of this album with the latest single of 20s. This is to me the weakest song that Ghost has ever planned out, and it's incredibly juvenile with its annoying chorus, though it starts things pretty decently on some menacing guitar riffs, but the brass sections and the way these sounds were executed, it's such a big misstep. It's quite quirky, but it just feels like that it could have been in like a Hotel Transylvania type of horror comedy movie, that it does not make anything worthwhile of the quality than what the rest of the album does. The track Darkness at the Heart of My Love, for me, is another very good song. It starts things so beautifully with the acoustic setting, irresistible sound, comforting vocals into the introduction. This type of balladry was very consistent, and I find that Tobias's vocals on this track were passionate, and even onto the mixing and style of production. With this type of ballad, this is a really, really strong number that I personally think that is one of the better tracks than the singles. The track Griftwood, I have a really difficult time with. It's to me like one of those arena rock 80s glam hair hard rock type of genres. Very indifferent structure, and it does have a solid rocking mid-tempo and a decent balance of the band's instrumentation, but it does not fulfill so much. And I do think that Griftwood is one of those that, like 20s, that have some blander lyrics. Rite of Passage presents in this brief interlude haunting type of mood onto the repetitiveness of acoustic guitars and the sound of a gong cymbal that leads into the final track of this record, of Respite of the Spatal Fields. Being the longest song on this record at almost 7 minutes, this is on a slower direction, but like with Darkness at the Heart of My Love, it's pretty ominous as well. Sweet nature onto the vocals that remained so consistent and prominent onto the vocals that were incredibly melodic, and it's quite explorative and progressive, involving key changes and once again some terrific musicianship. This is a song that did grow ability on bringing such a very solid climactic performance to finalize the album, but I think that while I think the previous few tracks I really liked, I did like quite a lot, I think that this one does go in. Let's talk about the vocals for a bit. I think that Tobias Forge's vocals on this album are arguably the most different and quite experimental. He's quite characteristic in places, and he puts in such a diversity into his own way of exploration into his vocals, from the high falsetto head voice type of sounds to the lower grunting type of voices, and the harmonies on some of the tracks do blend in with the rest of the sound of the music. And I still find that Ghost as a band are really consistent with their art and not repeating themselves with each album, and that's what I do like very much as well. Impera does have a lot of moments, but it's just not enough where I think it does define as equally like on some of the previous albums in the band's discography. And the more I thought about the record, it just comes off as, to me, a really subpar follow-up to the earlier material. And I know that a lot of Ghost fans would be either agreeing or disagreeing with that, but personally, for me, as quite a casual listener, throughout the whole thing, it's absolutely not worth, to me, one of the picks to call it one of the strongest releases of the year so far. That's personally all I would like to say about Impera from Ghost, and let me know what you guys think of this in the comments down below. And in terms for a rating, I'm really confident of giving this a 6 out of 10. I know that's going to hate a lot of people, but this is all my own way and perspective of what I think about this record, and I know that in the minority, that I know it does deserve a lot of the critical acclaim that it does deserve, but I find this one to really not think to myself that this is one of the best records of 22. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.